Welcome everyone, my name's Sophie. I'm the Programs and Exhibition Manager at Flying Arts Alliance, and we're joined today with the wonderful Tess, who will be giving a webinar on public art made public with UAP. So before we begin today, Flying Arts acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands and seas on which we work with and create, pay respect as past, present and emerging. Our office is located on the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people, and we acknowledge the unending connection of First Nations peoples to this country. We support the aspirations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to voice, treaty, and truth. We value the contributions of First Nations artists, arts workers, creatives, practitioners, and communities to the work that we do. We are privileged to gather on this country. Just a super quick introduction today. I am going to hand over to Tess now, and enjoy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Sophie. I hope you can all hear me there. I'm also going to start off with an acknowledgement of country. So UAP acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all zooming in from today, and recognises the value, diversity and integrity of First Nations arts, cultures and expressions, and their continual significance today. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge that Indigenous sovereignty has never been ceded. So as Sophie mentioned, my name is Tess. I'm an assistant curator at UAP Urban Art Projects. Very excited to be joining you all today. UAP is a leading art consultant and the world's largest art manufacturer. From curation to installation, UAP works with artists and clients to transform visions into reality and provide incredible outcomes for the public realm. So a bit about me to start off with. I work within the consultancy team at UAP, and I work on primarily the delivery of public art strategies and master plans that inform the commissioning of artworks for developments, public spaces or cities. I'm still relatively new to UAP, having just joined the team in January this year. However, in the short time I've been with the company, I've already seen some incredible things being brought to life in the UAP workshop. Previously, I've worked at Outer Space. It's a non-for-profit arts organisation in Brisbane, and I hold a Bachelor of Fine Arts Visual Art from QUT. And since joining the UAP team, I've been involved in supporting a range of significant public art strategies across Australasia and the Middle East. Let's start off with a brief overview of UAP. So UAP is a global company. We have offices around the world in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, New York, Shanghai, and Riyadh, just to name a few locations. Globally, UAP has 3 art foundries across Brisbane, Shanghai, and New York, and each of these have specialist services that help us to create unique outcomes for hundreds of projects across the world. This image here you can see on screen is a recent work by Yayoi Kusama, who you're probably familiar with, and UAP worked with Kusama to manufacture these pumpkins in the New York foundry for her 2023 exhibition at David's Werner. So I am based in the Brisbane office, which you can see on screen here, and that's inside our Brisbane foundry. And Brisbane is the home base of our Australian manufacturing team. If you ever visit the UAP workshop, or if you're involved with UAP's public art projects, the Brisbane workshop is where you'll go. So across UAP's history, the company has supported a variety of artists, from emerging talent to highly established artists, many of whom haven't actually worked in public art before. And one of the things that makes UAP really unique is its ability and desire to act as this sort of catalyst for artists in terms of translating their practices from the gallery to the public realm. And the team's ability to expand artists' visions into tangible, large-scale outcomes is something that we'll look at in more detail today. So you can see on screen here, this is an image of our team in the Brisbane workshop, and they're working on a guide Kiarahi, which is a crystal-encrusted waka or phantom canoe by Maori artist Ruben Patterson for the Auckland Art Gallery in 2021. This is during the pattern making stage, where the team works to create the patterns that are used for either casting or prototyping. So it's really the first step in bringing these ideas from concept design into physical forms. And because artists are really at the heart of public art, it's really important to UAP that the artist is directly involved in the fabrication process. Even though our works are really large scale, there's a lot of ways that artists can infuse their craft into the final artwork. So you can see here Judy Watson on the left, and she's looking at some material studies in the Brisbane workshop. And then Lucy Carmichael on the right, working with the team to manufacture Judy Watson's Nerambul and Nerang River freshwater saltwater. And that's installed at Hodder on the Gold Coast, and that was installed in 2020. So UAP is always tapping into artist practice in our workshops, and there's some fantastic recaps of our past artist residencies on our website. You guys may know about this, and if you're interested in learning more about what the artists have explored, you can jump on and read more on our website. Before we jump into some case studies that I've prepared of UAP's public art projects, let's start by looking at exactly what is public art. How do we define it, and why is it important? So, at its essence, public art is an artwork made of any medium that has been produced by a professional artist and is located in a publicly accessible space. So this could be a park, a plaza, a public building, a bridge, underpass, laneway, or a privately owned public space. And you can see here just a few examples of UAP's diverse public artworks, and we'll talk about some more in detail soon. So public art, it should be site-specific. So it responds to the site's unique cultural, social, and historical context, whilst also being designed to suit the technical constraints of its location. You know, this is a really key aspect of public art, which can differ from gallery practice, and that's something we work with artists in terms of translating their work, is that artworks have to be designed and manufactured in a way which enables the work to exist for at least 25 years in often outdoor environments. So that can be really tricky to translate. And most importantly, public art is created for the public. So when we try to define what makes a successful public artwork, it all comes down to the artwork being accessible for everyone. For a public artwork to function conceptually, critically, and socially, it needs to be mutually welcoming to the community and accepted by those communities that it exists within. So often the most successful public artworks are not only accessible, but they're also highly layered with the ability to achieve multiple things at once. So let's dive into a few of UAP's public artworks across Queensland, and these can start to give us an idea of the diverse roles of public art within public spaces. So firstly, public art can support urban design. So you can see here, this is Robert Andrews' Grounded in the Present. This work is on Creek Street in Brisbane, so if you've walked through the city, you might have seen it. And UAP curated, designed, and delivered this work for Dexus and BVN's The Annex, which is this beautiful, innovative building, and it's envisioned as this like tropical tree house within the city. So expanding on this, UAP developed a curatorial vision for the site, which is called Interleave, and this referenced the dappled fig canopy adjacent to the site, which you can see in the background of this image, and it called for artworks which envisioned the potential between past and future and seamlessly integrated art within architecture. So UAP worked with the selected artist, Robert Andrew, to develop the final work, which we can see here. And you can see how the work is really seamlessly embedded within the site's architectural and landscape design and adheres to the site's design language through the use of color and material. And because it's highly integrated and a functional form, it invites passers-by to be seated and grounded within the area, as you can see here. And so this work not only serves as a functional bench, it also incorporates layered narratives of the site's pre-colonial history. So it references mangrove trees, which were historically much more prominent in the nearby river, as you can see in the beautiful cast bronze roots which emerge from the concrete bench. And these provide a sense of discovery as the work slowly reveals itself from beneath the infrastructure. And the work really supports the initial curatorial vision for the artwork, which offers possibilities for a reimagined future by reinstating the site's historical landscape within the highly developed city. So secondly, public art can support wayfinding and destination making. So an example of this is Brian Robinson's Citizens Gateway to the Great Barrier Reef, which is on the Cairns Esplanade. You can see here, UAP fabricated this work and they worked directly with Brian to ensure that the artist's hand was visible in the final work. And so Brian hand carved the cast stingray that you can see on the front left, and he incorporated traditional Torres Strait Islander carving practice directly within the more contemporary form of the work. Citizens Gateway to the Great Barrier Reef is really momentous in form, and it's inextricably linked to the natural landscape of the site. So you can see that it frames the view of the water, which conceptually and physically acts as a gateway to the reef. And with its large reflective form, it is highly accessible and captivating. So it uses its really Instagrammable nature to attract people to the work, as you can see here, and make the Cairns Esplanade a really must visit destination. So thirdly, public art can provide people with a sense of direction, encourage them to dwell within a place. So an example of this is Judy Watson's Tow Row, which is outside the Gallery of Modern Art here in Brisbane. And this work was curated by Quagoma and then fabricated by UAP. So Judy developed the work specifically for the site's unique context, and she worked with the Queensland Museum and the State Library of Queensland, which are both on the same site as Goma, to examine archival photography of similar tow row nets used in this specific part of the river. So to fabricate the work, UAP worked closely with Judy and also Lacey Carmichael, who was then an emerging artist, to cast Lacey's woven net into bronze and develop a specific patina which created the illusion that the net had recently risen from the water. And so tow row is quite interesting in that it also involves this augmented reality component, which you can see here, and it's a highly accessible way for visitors to engage directly with the work and increases dwell time within the space. So these images are from Quagoma's website, and there's more information on there about the work's interactive components, so definitely have a look if you want to learn more. And lastly, among many other things, public art can make places feel ambient and alive and welcome people to public spaces. So an example of this is Ned Khan's Turbulent Line, which is on the facade of Brisbane Domestic Airport's car park. UAP curated, commissioned and fabricated this work by international artist Ned Khan, and it really demonstrates the power of injecting a high-profile artist into public space to create really interesting outcomes. And so this is a kinetic facade, and it's made of approximately 117,000 suspended aluminium panels, and its dynamic movement in the wind really softens the car park's infrastructure, and it has this added wow factor which welcomes people who have just arrived to the city via the airport. And so you can see here in this detail, the line running through the facade really epitomizes Brisbane through its reference to the city's river, which really grounds the work inextricably in the site's location. This is especially important to orient people within the city once they have arrived via plane or when they exit the airport terminals. And this artwork also supports the architecture by assisting in ventilation and shade for users of the car park. So it really achieves multiple functions. So now we've talked a little bit about UAP and public art in general. Let's jump into 3 case studies of UAP's projects, which really demonstrate the diverse public art process from start to finish. So I'm going to start with an example of a community engagement and site-specific artwork commissioning process, and then I will discuss an internationally renowned artist who popped up in Brisbane, and then finally a national icon who is synonymous with public art in Australia. So this first example is of community engagement and site specificity, and it's the Rockhampton Riverside Precinct, which was delivered by Rockhampton Regional Council, Urbis and UAP, and it occurred from 2017 to 2018 as part of the council's revitalisation project. So this project resulted in the commissioning of 3 permanent public artworks, which you can see here on screen. There's 1 landmark sculpture, 1 discovery sculpture, and 1 pavement artwork. And some of you may even be familiar with this project already. And as a regional example, it really demonstrates the diversity of not only the forms of public art, but the sites that artworks can exist on as well. So often when we think of public art, it can be associated with major high-rise developments in city centres, but this example really gives us an idea of how public art can exist almost anywhere. So for this project, UAP facilitated a community workshop which informed the commissioning of both the discovery sculpture and the pavement opportunities. So this is a really great example of how the public art commissioning process can be highly site-specific, not only through concept development, but through directly engaging with the local community. So here are some snippets of the 2-day professional development workshop, which was held in Customs House in Rockhampton, and it had UAP's curators and designers and 7 artists from the Rockhampton area. And these artists were selected through an EOI process, and then the selected artists were paid a fee for their participation. So you can see some examples of how UAP led artists through explorations in 3D processes and maquette making. And UAP's goal for community workshops like this one is to really support artists to develop concepts that are suitable not only for the specific opportunity, but for future opportunities as well. So as we know, public art commissions can generally be difficult to secure without prior experience, but community workshops workshops like these are a really invaluable opportunity for artists at the start of their career within the public realm to gain that experience and examples of their work. And this is also a great example of the intrinsic value of public art. In addition to creating permanent artworks for the site, this Rockhampton project also contributed to capacity building for the local community and strengthened the Rockhampton arts industry. So then the artist concepts developed in this workshop were reviewed by the Rockhampton Regional Council, and 2 artists, Belinda Waugh and Raymond Garrett, were selected to move into the concept design and the manufacturing stages. So you can see here on screen, their initial concepts are on the left, Belinda's is at the top, and then Raymond below, and then moving through to the concept design phase in the middle, and then you can see the final artworks as they appeared on site on the right. And this progression from initial designs to the fully realized public artworks demonstrates how public artists of any level of experience can start with something small and see it evolve into something really highly tangible and permanent. So within the Rockhampton precinct, final opportunity was this landmark sculpture, and this was commissioned through a more typical process whereby UAP provided the Rockhampton Regional Council with a selection of 6 artists, and these were more established artists. And then from this selection, South Australian artist Tom Borges was ultimately commissioned for the landmark sculpture, which you can see here installed on the site. So here are some reference images that Tom drew upon to create the initial concept for the work. Tom's practice generally examines the increasing digitalization of the world, and he presents digital aesthetics and motifs in physical forms. So it's a really interesting translation into how that exists as public art. So for this commission, Tom was inspired specifically by rocks as these marks of significant places and symbols of stability and strength, but also it really playfully references Rockhampton's name. And this is an example of the kind of work UAP does with artists during the concept design phase to extrapolate their initial concept into an indicative package like we can see here on screen, which really helps clients and stakeholders to visualize the artwork prior to it being fabricated. So then moving through the process, on this slide, we can see how those previous references have then evolved into Tom's initial concept sketches on the left. And then on the right, you can see a resolved design that starts to determine the materials and the scale of the final work. So here we can really see how his interest in digital aesthetics and the subject of rocks has really morphed into this part digital, part geological landmark form for the site. Then here we have some more images of the final artwork installed on the site. This work has really come to exist as a monolithic form on the edge of Rockhampton's river and a key marker of the location. So the striking sheeted aluminium form with the split through the middle references the sky and frames the river and the mountains of the site's unique location. And this final work, it's really specific to Rockhampton's identity, and it also brings in references to the past and the future. So it does that multi-dimensionality that we talked about earlier. So moving on to our second case study, this is Florentine Hoffman's Messengers of Brisbane. And Florentine is an international artist based in the Netherlands, and he's quite renowned. And this was his pop-up as part of the Brisbane Festival. So you may be familiar with Florentine's work. He specializes in developing these really large-scale, playful, temporary artworks, which are reminiscent of pop cultural forms. So you can see the rubber duck, floating hippo, and then the stuffed rabbit are some of his other works. But for this work, Messengers of Brisbane, Florentine created a series of these 6 large inflatable Gouldian finches, and these were commissioned for the 2020 Brisbane Festival and curated and delivered by UAP. So on the left here, you can see Florentine's initial watercolor sketch of the Gouldian finch, and he specifically chose this finch because it's native to Australia. And then to translate his sketch into a public artwork, Florentine joined UAP's fabrication team in Brisbane, where the team 3D scanned a taxidermy Gouldian finch, like you can see here, and then they created the digital model, which is shown on the bottom of the screen. And then UAP worked to transfer the digital form into these 7-meter tall inflatable sculptures. They used UV stabilized bird's fabric and then crafted the bird's legs from fiberglass. So it's really evident here how the digital modeling process helped the team to accurately replicate the finch's vibrant colours and unique shape into a public artwork. So during the 2020 Brisbane Festival, these finches were exhibited across Brisbane CBD, atop some of the iconic buildings across South Bank, in the city of the Goodwill Bridge, etc. And often when we think of public art, we envision large metal sculptures like the previous work by Tom Borges, which are permanently installed and are really infrastructural in nature. However, Messengers of Brisbane is an example of how public art can actually be designed to be temporary, where it doesn't require any permanent fixings to the site. And this means it can be ephemeral, flexible, and installed more than once at a variety of locations. So because of this, Messengers of Brisbane was not only able to be exhibited again for a second year during the 2021 Brisbane Festival, but it was also featured in a 6-week tour of regional Queensland. So these finches made their way to the top of iconic landmarks and public spaces in the Mackay Festival of Arts, Townsville's North Australian Festival of Arts, and the Blackall Festival in Blackall and Tambo. You can see how the flexibility of the temporary infrastructure, and we can see it here again peeking through the trees, created the opportunity for this high caliber public artwork by an internationally renowned artist to exist in smaller regional areas where it might not have been exhibited otherwise. And while Florentine is a major international artist, temporary works connected to festivals across different regions can also be a great avenue for more emerging artists to gain experience in the public realm and develop a portfolio of demonstrated public artworks which assist in securing a permanent commission. So now onto our third and final case study. It wouldn't be an overview of public art if we didn't discuss Lindy Lee. So this is Lindy Lee's work at the MCA, and Lindy Lee is a significant national icon. She's based in northern New South Wales, and she really specializes in these large-scale public artworks which explore Buddhism philosophies surrounding the inextricable links between humanity, nature, and the cosmos. And UAP has worked with Lindy for almost a decade to realize her public artworks across Australia, China, and Abu Dhabi. While Lindy is renowned for her public art practice, she also has a very prolific gallery practice that has spanned decades. And you can see some of her gallery and public artworks here on screen. So Lindy often visits the UAP workshop to develop her works in person. Here she is pouring her own flung bronze works in the workshop, and she's actually the only artist who is able to pour her own metal like this. This work, Secret World of a Starlight Ember, was fabricated in UAP's Shanghai workshop, which you can see on screen. And the team in Shanghai specializes in the panel beating process, so they have really different capabilities to what we have in Australia. However, this work was manufactured during COVID, so it necessitated a really new way of working from both Lindy and the UAP team. So using a scaled maquette, which you can see here on the top left, Lindy applied her signature patterns to the maquette from her New South Wales studio, and then UAP's Australian team 3D scanned the maquette and shared it digitally with UAP in Shanghai. And the file was then printed onto vinyl at scale. And then you can see on the right where the Shanghai workshop has applied the pattern to the artwork's shell. And this is used as a guide for creating the artwork's characteristic perforations. And this process, which occurred through necessity due to COVID, has evolved into UAP's typical operations where the technical design team can now use augmented reality in a similar way. And they use a HoloLens to accurately mark out, manipulate, and weld different materials based on digital design. So this work by Lindy was commissioned for her most comprehensive survey exhibition, Lindy Lee Moon in a Dewdrop, at the MCA in Sydney from 2020 to 2021. And in contrast to the previous example of Florentine's work, which was highly temporary and inflatable, Lindy's work was also initially commissioned as a temporary work, but it is infrastructurally permanent in nature. And the reception to the artwork and its placement framing the Sydney Harbour, and this is a great shot of it here, the reception was so positive, it became a permanent feature of the MCA forecourt in 2021. So this work really exemplifies the power of public art, as I talked about earlier, to become a signifier of place and to be intrinsically connected to its site. While the work was never meant to remain at the MCA forecourt, it is now a really recognisable and loved part of the MCA and Sydney Harbour as a whole. So Lindy's work is a really example of a high caliber artist at the top of her practice. And it's a really aspirational example of how incredible public artworks can be. So I just wanted to land on that one as a kind of top tier example of public art, but that concludes our 3 case studies. So let's throw to some questions.
What are key tips for artists looking to work in the public realm?
Thanks, Sophie. I think when our curatorial team is looking to pitch an artist who is emerging or doesn't have that existing public art experience, the best way in which we can present emerging artists is with really high quality materials. So it's really important for artists to have a visible profile and a visible practice, whether that be through a website or a portfolio, which includes high quality documentation that's easily available online and that can easily be shared from one person to another. Another key piece of advice for emerging artists is really to look into securing gallery representation. Gallerists can be critical in obtaining exhibition opportunities and profiling artist practice. So researching gallerists and taking steps towards securing gallery representation is a key step towards making yourself more visible and being able to secure public art opportunities.
And what opportunities does UAP have for regional or remote artists?
Well, similar to what I discussed with the Rockhampton Riverside precinct example, from time to time UAP will offer professional development opportunities aligned with specific public art projects. Usually these do originate from council funding and are really well advertised, so always keep an eye out for these opportunities if they arise. When we work on projects across the world, we always try to research local artists when we're developing our curatorial approaches. And we work with local curators to ensure that we tap into that local knowledge and local networks. And this is why it's really important to have a really visible profile that can be easily shared.
And how do UAP's artist residencies occur?
Artist residencies at UAP are super interesting, and UAP works to offer numerous of these across our foundries and studios each year. And then through these residencies, artists are able to explore their unique interests in terms of public art fabrication and really utilize our diverse expertise and equipment. There's no formal application process for these residencies, and they're really selected through UAP's discretion, but we are always eager to receive artist profiles and portfolios and hear from artists who are interested in residencies at UAP. These residencies aren't funded though, so artists have to cover all costs relating to travel and accommodation. But definitely, if it's something you're interested in, or if you're interested in public art in general, share your profile with the team at UAP and really get your name into our consciousness.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much everyone for joining, and thank you Tess and UAP for this incredible webinar.
Thanks so much, Sophie. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you found it really insightful to hear more about UAP, and thank you so much Flying Arts for hosting. And if you do have any additional questions from today, feel free to reach out to me directly or to Flying Arts and they can pass your question on. My contact details are here on screen, or you can head to our website to learn more.
Thank you everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.